Ever since we started truck camping, we've always talked about going to Alaska. This summer, we did that. Alaska's amazing. It's vast, it's wild. The entire population of Alaska is the same as the city of Columbus, Ohio, where we're from. For that vast amount of land, how many people live there, it's definitely still the last frontier even today. We've had the most incredible trip, saw the most beautiful scenery we've ever seen. It exceeded our expectations.
Yeah.
We knew it was going to be pretty epic, but once you get there and you experience it and you see these things, it's like... But we wanted to sit down and do this video of our favorite things that we did, maybe some tips, answer some of your questions, a little bit of a recap of our trip, and maybe it'll help you if you're planning your trip to Alaska, or maybe if you're just curious what it's all about. A good place to start is probably the top 3 things that we did and probably our top 3 memories of Alaska.
The number one thing that I think was the best was driving to the Arctic Ocean on the Dalton Highway.
I think the real draw of doing the Dalton Highway is that it's just completely wild. We've never had the feeling that we had driving the Dalton before or after that week-long trip to the Arctic. It's 500 miles from Fairbanks to the Arctic. Most of it is, there's nothing there. It's just wilderness, but half of it is absolutely nothing. Like no gas stations, no people, nothing. Pure wilderness. There's not many places in the world left like that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing there is Coldfoot with a small gas station and convenience store.
And from Coldfoot to the Arctic, there's nothing. And that's 240 miles. That's the same distance from like Cincinnati, Ohio to Cleveland, Ohio. Imagine that distance with nothing. No gas stations, no people. That's just crazy to think about.
Even here, like if you go out west, you still can drive a couple hours and get somewhere. There, like it's just, you're driving for days to like nothing. And your cell service don't work, your internet doesn't work, your phone doesn't work. You just realize like that you're completely by yourself, and it's just a really cool feeling. Knowing that it's just you and all the stuff you have, and you're kind of like surviving because there's no one there. That
is like the last frontier feel. Like that's the main draw, I think, of doing the Dalton. And then of course you get to see the landscape change. You pass the Yukon River, then into the Brooks Range, and it turns into tundra.
We drove in the summer, it was like light the whole time. So it didn't get dark, so that was really awesome.
So that's the perks of doing it in the summer, is that you get to experience the midnight sun up there, where it does not set for 24 hours for a couple months. It stays in the sky, which is pretty cool.
So definitely recommend doing that during the summer.
It's a different experience of doing it in the fall, when it does get dark earlier. And if we were driving at 2 or 3 a.m., it's still, you can see the sun. And then also on the Dalton, if you're lucky, you might be able to see some awesome wildlife. We saw 3 grizzlies all the way at Prudhoe Bay, which surprised me. I did not expect to see grizzly bears all the way up there in the tundra. Like there's no trees, nothing. And then we saw muskox for the first time.
Like
and
a lot of them,
I think those are my new favorite animals. They're just so cool. They're kind of funny with like their long fur and their little tiny legs underneath. Oh my gosh, the whole caribou crossing. I can't believe we were there. It's just like a matter of being at the right time at the right place and seeing hundreds of caribou crossing all around you across the Dalton. Pretty much everything that we're going to be talking about, we have videos on.
So what's the second thing that you liked the most?
It was terrifying, but at the same time it was so cool. It was the kayaking Portage Lake to Portage Glacier. Before our trip to Alaska, I always wanted to just go like kayaking among glacier icebergs. And we got to do that there. And it was everything that I imagined it to be. It was surreal. It was so cool. And then of course, like we almost died casually there. But so that's why it's kind of like a bittersweet kind of thing, because it was so cool, but it was actually like one of the most terrifying things that we've ever done. That's definitely in our top 3. And what about the last one?
Driving the McCarthy Road to McCarthy and hiking on the Root Glacier and seeing the Kennecott mines and everything.
Yeah.
It was only about 60 miles long, but the road was completely washboard the whole time, so we were going like 10.
It took us 6 hours to do 60 miles, so that averages 10 miles per hour.
Yeah.
That's because of the washboard, especially with a truck camper where it's really heavy. It hits into each groove.
You can't air down the tires because you have a heavy load on the truck. So you just have to go 10 miles. If you start going faster, the whole thing just
starts shaking.
It feels like you're just going to break everything. So
yeah, but yeah, that whole McCarthy Road, McCarthy, Kennecott, and Root Glacier, it's all its own experience, and highly recommend. It's stunning. The Kennecott mines are huge and beautiful, like the red buildings. And then you walk past them for like 2.5 miles to the Root Glacier. You get to walk on this huge glacier. And it's also really remote. Even like Chitna barely has anything. Yeah. So pretty much there's nothing, I would say, from like either Valdez to there or from Glen Allen to there. That's a tip. If you're going to do that, you have to know where you're going to fill up. There's no diesel, probably from Glen Allen or Valdez. Yeah.
Was there a gas station in McCarthy?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think maybe for the locals, maybe there's something.
There was like a small gas station in Chitna.
It only has gas, no diesel. Yeah, so if you're doing that, make sure you're good on gas or diesel.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that we almost ran out of diesel on the way back because they calculated that we should have enough to get back to Glen Allen. But since we were going 10 miles per hour, and like stopping and going because the roads were bad, we actually got really bad fuel mileage, and that like messed up my whole calculations. So we like barely made it. We made it to Glen Allen like 1 mile left or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Not a lot of fuel stations in that area, so it is pretty remote.
Whole week we went to McCarthy. It was warm and sunny and completely clear, and the people there said that it's not supposed to be this warm and sunny at that time of the year.
Yeah, August. It should be rainy. It was supposed to be rainy all August.
So they were like surprised.
We got a week of warmth and sun. It was just glorious.
Made it really amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those are our top 3. I think those were just like those stand out to us of all the things that we did. All the coastal towns are absolutely beautiful in Alaska.
Valdez is really nice too.
Seward and Homer is the ones that we visited on the coast. Regarding wildlife,
on the way to Alaska through Canada, we actually saw a lot of animals. We saw black bears like every single day, sometimes like 6-7 bears a day. We saw porcupines, we saw foxes, we saw a few moose far away, and we saw a giant grizzly bear really close by.
We captured that on video. That's crazy that we did because sometimes they run away, we can't get the camera out, but we captured that whole moment of our first ginormous, it was a giant grizzly bear. And that was our first grizzly bear sighting in our lives. It was incredible. In Alaska, we saw the 3 grizzly bears in Prudhoe Bay. There was a few groups of muskox up there. That was an awesome animal to see. We've never even heard of muskox, honestly, before this trip. That huge herd of caribou, that was hundreds of animals in the herd. That's all on video. That was an epic moment. That was all Prudhoe Bay. And then in Valdez, we saw 3 black bears feeding on the salmon at the hatchery. And then we saw a moose with 2 twin babies, porcupine, at least 1 mosquito, swans. Swans surprised me. I didn't know there were swans in Alaska. A lot of the lakes, there's usually a swan pair there that come and have their babies in the summertime, which was so cool to see. And of course, salmon. A bunch of salmon. It's crazy how much salmon is there. And then in Canada, from Alaska on the way back to the States, we saw herds of bison, of wild bison, which is crazy. Yeah. We saw black bears on the way back. We didn't see any grizzly bears anymore on the way back. We saw stone sheep climbing on the little cliff on the side of the road by a lake. And then we saw bighorn sheep.
Those are big.
Those are huge. We did see elk as well, and a moose crossing a stream. That was a beautiful shot.
I guess that's it. We pretty much saw all the animals that we wanted to see. Yeah. The only thing we didn't see that we wanted to see was a polar bear.
But we didn't come at the right time to the Arctic to do that. Yeah. I guess they start coming into Prudhoe Bay in like September when the temps cool down. So you actually could see them if you go that late, but then that's you would really miss cold and
you would miss the midnight sun, and we didn't see Bigfoot either.
I know.
I did see a stuffed one in Tok at a store, like a full-size stuffed Bigfoot. Yeah. So that means they do exist in Alaska since there's a stuffed one, right?
Do you guys think they exist or no? But like comment down below if you think Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Exist. I think are they the same thing? if they exist. The next category is going to be food. Honestly, the food scene in Alaska is kind of lacking. You come there for the wilderness and the scenery. That's what you go to Alaska for, not for the food. But our top 3 things that we ate.
One of our top favorite ones was Soba in Fairbanks. It's a Moldovan restaurant, and that food was really delicious.
If you've never tried Eastern European cuisine, that would be a great place to eat. It's literally like close to what our mothers made.
Yeah.
It was delicious. The next place is the Hungry Robot in Fairbanks. It's a pizza place, and that was really good. In my opinion, it was better than the Talkeetna spinach bread.
Yeah.
It did not live up to the hype, but anyways, the number 3 is the halibut fish and chips at the boardwalk
in
fish
Homer.
and chips in Homer,
Yeah.
Alaska. That was some good fish. They seasoned it really well. It was juicy. I want some of that again. A really good dessert was blueberry crisp at the Potato. Apparently they don't serve them every day, so if they are available when you're there, you have to get one for dessert because they're so good. If you're going to Alaska in the summertime, expect a cool, wet summer. We only had a few days that were in the upper 70s and hot, and the rest were cool, rainy, sometimes sunny. Yeah, so that's the Alaskan summer, is a cool, wet summer.
It did rain a lot and it was cloudy a lot, but pretty much all the major points of interest that we went to, the cool places, we got good weather in those places.
Yes.
Like we went to the Arctic, it was like almost 70 and sunny, which rarely happens there. And then we saw Denali like 4 days in a row or something. And it was like sunny the whole time and beautiful and warm. McCarthy and the Root Glacier and everything there, it was sunny for a whole week, which wasn't supposed to be sunny. Fairbanks was nice and sunny. So pretty much all the major things that we did, we got blessed with the weather and we got nice and sunny weather.
Yeah.
Except Valdez. The whole time Valdez, it was cloudy and rainy. That was probably the only thing that we didn't really like about Alaska was the weather. I mean, we didn't expect the weather to be really nice because it's Alaska, so it's supposed to be cold and stuff.
So bring waterproof boots, waterproof clothes if you're planning on hiking in the rain, which you probably will end up doing because it rains a lot, and raincoats.
What surprised us about Alaska? What surprised you about Alaska?
Are really similar to the Pacific Northwest, like Oregon and Washington. Like the prices are similar. Everything's like $1 or $2 more expensive. Fuel prices they're a little bit better, but they're still expensive, and that
surprised me the most because Alaska is where a lot of the fuel comes from.
Yeah.
So I expected like cheap fuel. I knew like Canada's gonna be expensive fuel, but then I was thinking like Alaska would be cheaper fuel. But Alaska and Canada fuel is pretty much the same. And yeah, that's because that's where the oil comes from. That's not where actually the fuel is refined and made.
Yeah.
And that's why it's expensive. The prices, like since we came from the West Coast through Canada into Alaska, pretty much all of that is just kind of expensive and overpriced.
Yeah.
The whole West Coast, Canada and Alaska. Like if we went there to Alaska and Canada right from Ohio, we'd probably be like shocked at the prices because Ohio prices are a lot better. But since we went from the West Coast, which is real expensive too, then it was kind of...
It was all similar, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in Alaska, it kind of makes sense that everything's more expensive because it takes a long time to get the produce and everything there. That leads us to our biggest expense, which was fuel.
Yes.
Yes. So right now, before you watch this, comment how much money you think you spend on fuel. From Washington through Canada to Alaska, back from Alaska through Canada back to Washington. Okay, and now we'll tell you how much.
So I actually recorded all of our fuel fill-ups, every single one for the entire trip. Look at that. Very proud of myself. So the cost of diesel to get from Washington to the Alaska border, the total for diesel of that section was $778.75. This is in US dollars. We converted it. And then in Alaska, our entire driving around in Alaska, the Dalton Highway, everything, that total was $1,868.52.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And then the way back from the Alaska border down to Washington, we took a little bit of a different route going back, and you'll see that in an upcoming couple videos. But we spent $960.55 from the Alaska border down to the States. So the total for our entire trip through Canada, through Alaska, back through Canada. The total was $3,607.82. What do you guys think? Does that surprise you? Is that less or more than you thought it would be?
Canada's like giant. It's not just you cross from Washington in a couple hours to Alaska.
Right.
It's a giant, like it's huge. Canada's huge.
It took us 33 and a half hours to get from Vancouver to the Alaskan border.
Yeah.
And it took us 7 days. We divided it up like 5, 6, 7 hour days of driving.
It's a far distance, yeah. Truck and camper gets around like between 10 and probably 13 miles per gallon, depending where you go. Most of the time, you're either traveling on mountains, bad roads, bumpy roads, pothole roads where you're like gassing, braking. So you actually get really pretty bad mileage per gallon when you go to Canada and Alaska. For all the fill-ups in Alaska that we did, the cheapest one was $3.85 per gallon for diesel, and that was in Costco in Anchorage. And also there was a small gas station by Denali. It was also $3.85 there. And our most expensive fill-up in Alaska was in Coldfoot, and it was $7.49 per gallon.
That was on the Dalton. Yeah.
That was on Dalton Highway.
And you have no choice but to fill up there because past Coldfoot is the 240 miles to the Prudhoe Bay, to the Arctic Ocean. In Canada, on the way to Alaska, our most expensive fill-up was at Poseidon Junction, and that was $6.77 per gallon. And our least expensive on that trip at Costco in Grand Prairie, and that was $4.39 per gallon.
So yeah, that's a little bit on how much we spent, what you should expect to spend when you go on fuel. And yeah, get a Costco membership if you haven't figured it out yet.
I think there's 2 Costco's in Alaska, Fairbanks and Anchorage. It's worth it to go there for fuel and then to stock up, because pretty much you will be stocking up in Fairbanks or in Anchorage. All the other little towns or coastal towns, they're not going to have much. So Fairbanks was a good point to do the Dalton Highway because the Costco was there. We could stock up for the Dalton and then stock up after the Dalton. Anchorage and Fairbanks are the only 2 major cities that have pretty much everything that you need. It's only just small towns with barely anything there. So yeah, your stock up points are going to be in Anchorage and Fairbanks for sure.
Also, another thing is service pretty much just works in like the bigger towns, which are kind of spread far apart from each other. So definitely expect to not have service when you go from town to town. And that goes for Alaska and for Canada when you drove on the Kaiser Highway. And when you're in town, do all the stuff you need to do with phone service and call whoever you need to call.
Yeah.
And then expect not to have service until you get to the next town, which can be 5-6 hours away. Or
unless you have Starlink, then you're good. It works everywhere.
Yeah. And also in Alaska, like everywhere you go, you need to plan your trip. Plan where you need to fill up, plan where you're going to get food, where you're going to go grocery shopping. Everything needs to be planned. You can't just go.
There's no gas stations in every corner. There could be hours without gas stations. It takes a little bit of planning around the fuel situation.
We needed to upload videos and everything.
Yeah.
So we also had to plan where our phones are going to work, where we're going to have cell phone coverage and stuff like that. So
yeah. We had to turn on some lights because we're running out of daylight. So excuse the light change here. But we had a few questions from you guys that we wanted to answer. Ralph asked, and Ralph always comments on our videos. So thank you, Ralph, for watching all of them or commenting. Hi. He asked, how has your rig been holding up during your trip in Alaska? Things like heater leaks, cooking expenses, etc. Curious minds want to know. The rig held up really well. We actually had no issues on our entire trip, thank God. Before our trip in Washington, we had a whole month-long tire fiasco.
And rim cracking.
It was crazy. You should watch that video. Yeah, it was just insane. We were actually questioning if we should even do this trip. But we decided to just push through it and just go for it. And the entire trip was blessed. No issues at all. No cracked windshields. No flat tires. Nothing happened. Thank God. Seriously. We were so worried about that.
We didn't have any leaks. For expenses, our biggest expense was the fuel. Other than that, it was just normal, everyday stuff that we...
Yeah. Like grocery shopping was a regular thing that we always do. The other expense would have been just like attractions and stuff, but we didn't spend a lot. We did the Chena Hot Springs, which is $20 per person. And then we did the fishing license, which was $100, and we bought some things for fishing, like the waders we had to buy. We didn't have some fishing equipment.
And everything else we kind of just went and did on our own. Like you saw, we went kayaking on our own.
There are a bunch of excursions that you can drop money left and right on in Alaska. Helicopter tours, the bush plane tours, all kinds of cruises, kayaking, going out to the Katmai National Park and the Clark National Park to view the bears. The helicopter tours are like $600 to $1,000 per person for like an hour, which is crazy.
You can spend a lot of money if you want.
You can spend a lot of money in Alaska. The attractions are not cheap there at all.
Yeah, for us it was pretty much just normal expenses that we have living in a truck camper, and we did spend more on fuel. That's pretty much it.
Cooking. So besides us eating at the restaurants that you see in the videos, between all that, we would make our own meals in the camper.
We would stock up in Fairbanks or in Anchorage. They have a Costco and Walmart, so we would stock up. We have a fridge. And we would make our own food here in the camper like we usually do. That wasn't like a different expense that we normally have.
Yeah. Randy asks, I have a 90-day trip planned starting June 2024 to Alaska from Ohio. We're from Ohio, and we're so excited for you, Randy, knowing how epic that trip is going to be. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Do you happen to have a Google Map link that you can share with all of your must-see points of interest? I do not, but if you're interested in that, I still have everything fresh in my mind. I can still make all the points. So if you would like to have that, Randy, let me know, and I'll try to get that done before your June trip. And if anybody else, if you guys are interested, I can make it maybe available to everybody. Comment if you are interested in something like that. Thank you guys for your questions, and thank you to all of our viewers. We have quite a few new ones that just came aboard, so welcome to the channel. Thank you to our viewers that comment and like the videos. I feel like we have the best subscribers on YouTube. Everybody is so nice. If you have any questions about Alaska, leave them in the comments. We'll do our best to answer, but let me know which videos of Alaska were your favorites, and if you did the trip, comment down below what your favorites were in Alaska.
The last question is, would you do the trip again? Was it worth it?
I think it was definitely worth it. That trip is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine if you're from Ohio, if you've never been out of state or something, to go to a trip like this. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, you're driving down the road and you just see glaciers in the mountains all around you, left and right. It's just crazy. It's totally worth it. I'm just still awestruck of it. I just still daydream about it.
And before we went, we drove through the US, so we already saw a bunch of stuff. And the stuff we saw there still it
was just
crazier than
level.
what we saw here in the US.
Even Canada is absolutely stunning. We have a few videos of Canada after this, so you'll see what we mean, but stay tuned for those.
The Alaska trip was definitely worth it. I would go again after rest a little bit, because it is a crazy trip. It's not a relaxing trip at all.
Yeah.
You don't go to Alaska to relax and just kind of take it slow and easy. It's more about adventure, seeing cool stuff, having new experiences.
First of all, you're out in the vast wilderness, and being out there, you feel how fragile you are as a human. That's one of the things that we felt in Alaska that we didn't anywhere else. It's just man, if anything goes wrong, I'm out here by myself.
So the cool part of it too, just to have that feeling,
right,
that you never experienced anywhere else. The roads, you're either driving up or down mountains with a camper, on curvy roads, on muddy roads, washboard, trying to avoid potholes. So you're not just getting on the highway and cruising. You're always paying attention.
And you're always kind of planning ahead to make sure you're going to have a gas station. You're never just I'm going to go for a drive today and see what I see.
Yeah.
You have to plan everything and make sure you have a fuel station.
If you're going to Valdez, you're how far away is Valdez? How much fuel do I have? Where am I going to fill up? Where am I going to buy groceries? Am I going to have cell service? You have to plan that every day. I would definitely do it again. I feel like if you did it a second time, it would be a lot easier because we already know everything.
Yeah, that's the thing with Alaska. Before our trip, I was so intimidated about planning everything, but after we did it, it was actually pretty like straightforward. I wouldn't stress about planning everything because everybody does a similar route. Since it's only 20% roads, everybody does the same route, you know, through Fairbanks, Denali, Kenai Peninsula, and then, you know, the coastal towns. But it ended up being okay, and I thought we saw a lot of stuff. And
I feel like we saw everything we want to see.
That's a wrap for our best of Alaska, our tips, questions, expenses. Hopefully this was helpful if you're planning to go. This video is going to go up on Sunday, and Monday's Christmas, so we wanted to wish you guys a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We still have a few videos left from Canada, and then after that we're going to be starting a new series in January with a new location that's completely different from Alaska. I think you guys are going to be excited about it. I think you're going to enjoy it, especially in the winter time. But hint, we've been here before. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Born is the King.